What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. My name is O'Harry.
My name is Serena.
We're going to be training today, but today, well, Serena has been training with NomadAbs for a while now, and one of these days we got talking, and she told me about all her injuries, and I thought it was very interesting because she couldn't do some of the exercises that we were doing, and so I was like, well, what are exercises that you can do? What kind of injuries are you suffering from? And how can we adjust some of these things so that you can actually continue to be the beast that you are, because it seems like no matter what, she's still down to do whatever exercises that we are doing regardless. So I decided to ask her if we could just interview her, get to pick her brain a little bit, get to know what she has been doing in general. And yeah, so we're going to pretty much just take it from there. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us how long you've been training for?
Okay. So I've started my journey with sports when I was 6, with ballet. So I started with dancing. So from 6 to 16, it was all about dancing, like ballet, hip hop, jazz. Yeah, pretty
The
much.
whole nine.
Like, yeah, I went to gymnastics as well, and
Okay.
I did different type of individual sports to start. And then when I was 16, I found out about weights and the gyms, and I was
What?
like,
At
ooh,
16?
yes.
Whoa.
And so I started lifting at 16, and it was a very amazing way of implementing everything together. Like, I'm a person that likes to try everything.
Nice.
So I passed like all the sports apart from team sports. That's not my strength.
There's no I in
Don't
team.
put me in a team.
Yeah.
I've been traumatized when I was a kid, and yeah,
Oh, no.
that never. I never got past that. Like, I don't enjoy
Team sports.
No,
Okay.
no.
Well, that's a different story. We'll get into that a different time. All right.
But anyway, yeah, I've tried different things, but lifting was always something that I would really enjoy, to complement everything else.
Okay.
And I started enjoying it even more after doing Pilates for a little bit, because that really, like, Pilates gave me the structure of the movements and the awareness of my body, so that when I am in a gym or doing whatever type of exercise, I can actually feel like what's moving in my body, how it's moving, which muscle are engaging.
You feel more connected to your
Yeah.
body.
And
Interesting. I've never tried Pilates, by the way, but I've heard so many good things about them.
I'll take you.
All right. Yeah, I've always felt like, and this is, and I'm sure some people can probably relate, maybe guys more so, but I always felt like every time I hear Pilates, I just think like that's such a woman thing. But I also thought the same thing about yoga, and then when I started yoga, I was like, this is actually way more difficult than I imagined.
Yes.
And it humbled me very quickly. So yeah. I would imagine it's going to be the same with Pilates.
And Pilates is actually quite hard. Yeah, it is. Quite
So I've heard.
Yeah. So, but it gives you a lot of awareness, and so I just became really interested in, like, just feeling more my body. And in this whole journey, to be completely honest, I started training as a lot of people do, for physical looks. I had a lot more weight on when I was a teenager, and yeah, and I wanted to get fit, and I wanted to look good, and so that's how I started. So really, at the beginning was forcing myself to go to the gym and do sports, even though once I got there, like, and started, and once the first few months, years got by, I started really enjoying it. And yeah, and I've tried a lot of other different sports.
And so at what point was it that you kind of like injured yourself and or started experiencing injuries that you were like, listen, I might have to dial back, or whatever the case may be, if you feel
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a mix, because on one side I have an autoimmune condition that actually creates the easy injuries, let's say. And I got to that point where I started seeing that was something that would happen a lot while doing pole dancing, because pole pole dancing is a very challenging sport,
Yeah.
and there is a lot of pressure on the body, and like, yeah, it's very intense. And so I first injured my shoulder in pole dancing. I mean, it's not really the sport; it was my own fault.
Yeah,
Really.
interesting.
Like, the sport is intense, but I'm even more intense than the sport. And I was like,
If you can imagine.
yeah, until I get it, I won't leave this place. And so I would train like so long.
Oh, wow.
Way too much that my body could handle. And even when I would feel like my body being tired, I would be like, okay, just one more time to see if I can really get this figure, you know. And in one of the like upside down,
yeah, one of the
figures,
moves,
I felt like the shoulder kind of like went.
It dislocated.
Not dislocated, but it it lost strength for a moment, and then from there on, it's never been the same.
Oh my.
And I've been trying to
Rehabilitate
it, but hasn't really. Like, now I feel that every time that my muscle starts to grow, something that kind of like squeezed in there, and it's the same thing that happens with my tendons over here, which is why it's also really related to the autoimmune condition that I have.
Interesting. As much as I would like to actually probe a little bit more about the autoimmune, condition, which I also think is very interesting, right? Because everyone is also dealing with their own sort of issues in some way, shape, or form. And I don't want to say necessarily that they find that as an excuse per se, but to some extent that can be a reason no longer to want to, pursue a life of or an active lifestyle, right? But more than anything, I think that is interesting is what you said is, and I think a lot of people who have started that journey of training tend to overtrain, and that's where people also find themselves not necessarily trapped, but they find themselves suffering because they don't know when to listen to their body, right? Yeah. And I know when even for me, when I was starting with weight training and everything, I had that issue where at one point I was like trying to see how hard can I push, and to the point where it's like there was one day my friend was, he was trying to spot me, and the barbell damn near collapsed on my chest, and I was suffering, and it took him a second. Yeah. And my life flashed before my eyes, and I was like, yo, I need to relax, you know what I mean? And otherwise, because you need to listen to your body, I guess is what I'm trying to say more and more. And I think shortly after that, that's when I was like, you know what I think I'm going to do is stick to mainly calisthenics, because I don't find myself having to put on more weight than is necessary. Yeah. Because you're always going to be walking around with your body weight. You're always going to have to you will have to carry yourself, push yourself, and it's always going to be your regular body weight. And that was kind of like my wake up call to when I'm doing weights, put it to or humble myself with weights. Like there's no competition, like nobody's coming to the gym and being like, yo, well, people are, but you shouldn't have to be like, you shouldn't feel the pressure of being like, I need to impress, other people. You should the only competition you should have is with yourself. Yeah. And with that, I also, coming to the last question, I'm very curious. Despite all those injuries or, minor setbacks, you still find motivation. What is your motivation? What keeps you going? What wakes you up to be like, yo, I'm going to go at it like the Hulk today again, as usual. You know what I mean? when we're, by the way, when we're at the class, she's always there, just like she's doing her own. You can see the intensity. I'm like, turned into a Super Saiyan in some corner, and I'm like, calm down, Serena, you're making me look bad. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, yeah. So what's your motivation?
So I would love to mention something about something that you said before I go into that. And it's like, the competition is with yourself, and there is like a very thin line between pushing yourself over your comfort zone, because that's also important to do. To always be pushing yourself a little bit, but to also be very in tune with yourself as you do that. Because sometimes, and I know this for myself, when I started being like in pain and the injuries and being like, oh, I really don't want to do this, I would do like the bare minimum, and that was not enough either, because it wouldn't challenge myself. I wasn't really pushing. I was like stretching and doing like soft movement stuff, which at that moment was perfect because I was just beginning to rebuild my strength. But then I continued it for a while, and it goes into like again my motivation and what keeps me going.
Mm.
And the truth is that once I did the switch from like training because I wanted to look good to training because I love to feel strong, I love to feel healthy, I love to feel like alive, and training it's just a lot of times I can't be bothered to go training, but then once I'm there and I'm starting, I'm like, oh, this actually feels really good. Like my body
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
good, my brain feels good,
Yeah.
and it's like just this release of all these beautiful hormones that
Yeah.
are going into your
Yeah.
system, and
Yeah.
it feels really good. And the
Right.
more you do it, and the more you get the benefits from it. But mostly, it's like and I feel very sorry saying this, but I've seen my mom being really unfit for most of her life,
Mm-hmm.
and just having that example of like somebody
Mm.
that is relatively young,
Mm.
um, having difficulties doing like the most simple
Mm.
things,
Mm. Mm.
even if she's not like fat or anything, but she hasn't exercised her whole life, and so just seeing how difficult it is, I'm just like I don't want
Want to.
that.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to get, and then seeing my grandfather on the other side that is like 94 years old and he still climbs up trees, and I'm like,
Wow.
how the hell do you do that?
Wow.
Like you're 94 years old, will
Right.
you stop for a
Yeah,
second?
yeah, you're
Right?
giving us all high blood pressure right now, you know?
Right? And
Wow.
so I'm
Wow.
just like, I want to be able to continue living a good life,
Amazing.
and I
Yeah.
don't want to buy into the belief that life ends as you get older and older and
Yeah,
older.
yeah, yeah,
Like I
yeah.
want to be like, no.
Yeah.
I'm gonna continue improving my life and having my best life, even if
Yes.
my body gets older. But that doesn't mean that it will get worse. Like
Yes.
I'll do my best to keep
Yes.
these in the best shape possible, so I can enjoy a happy and alive and
Healthy
exciting
life.
life
Yeah.
as long as I can.
I listen. I couldn't second that anymore. No, really, because I think it's very interesting that you mentioned, like your grandfather, for example, because I feel like I see my mom and she's very active. She loves to walk. She does all these things, and I'm like, that's the kind of example that I want to lead. It's like when I have my kids, I want them to be able to look up to me and be like, yo, there's our dad. He's 94, still climbing coconut trees and going to get us coconuts. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Like that's the kind of of standard I want to set, because it is very important. It's funny that you see your mom and it still inspires you in that way, because one thing you said is like, this is your only body. I'm getting goosebumps, but it's like, it is true. This is our only body. Why not treat it with the utmost respect that we do, any other inanimate object that we have? You know what I mean? The same way you clean your car, the same way you clean your house. Like, you should be taking care of your body in the exact same fashion. Now, bonus question. You didn't expect this, but I'm going to ask you nonetheless. All right. Do you travel often?
Yes.
All right. Now, when you travel, how do you stay active? What do you do to stay active? After all, this is NomadAbs. So.
Yes, I am in love with children playgrounds. They're the best gyms. Like, they are the best gyms ever. If you go to a children playground, there are all these different things, and I've become expert on creative workouts.
Okay.
Because as traveling, like I didn't want to sometimes sign up into the gym. Like some gyms now have a more, like the world
dynamic
has adapted to nomad life in the last few years, but before then it wasn't. Like gyms would have like inscriptions fee that you would have to pay, and it's like, well, I'm only going to be here a couple of weeks or a month. I don't want to pay like the inscription fee.
Subscription, exactly.
So yeah, and I really personally love to be outside, outdoor, and so children playgrounds.
Amazing.
Highly recommended, and kind of like I go there, I try to run from wherever I am to the playground.
Nice.
So it's kind of like I start getting some movement in, and then when I get there, I just see what is available and
create.
and create. and that's really good for your creative brain. And it's
Yeah.
also good for your body. And
Yo, I
that's
love
all
that.
right.
Yo, listen, tips and tricks right over here. You know, you heard it here for. I didn't even think of that. Yep. Now I'm gonna be going around looking for children playground. You know, gonna be that one random dude who's just like playing with the kids, and I'm like, yo, sir, what are you doing?
Yeah, like I think I shared this with you once. You know, with the swings, you can actually use them as you would use a Pilates ball. You know, like
Yes, and
yeah,
put your feet there, yeah, and
you
like
can,
kind of like
and
yes, do like the
a
yeah.
lot of exercises with
It's a
swings.
good point, actually. Yes, I wouldn't. Yeah. You did mention that. I think I remember you saying that. But
And
yeah.
even like Bulgarian squats, I would do with the
Oh
swings.
yes,
Because
that's
you can
true
just
too.
like
Put one leg, hook
one
it
leg
there.
up.
Yo, listen. I mean, no
Right.
excuses. The point is, I guess what the reason why I asked is because I know that Serena loves to be active, and I know that she well, I know she travels every now and then, but I was very curious to know that what it is that she does, and everyone has their own thing, but that's an example. Like there's no excuse. We all have. There's always something that we can do somewhere, even if it's just simply just going for the run or going for a walk or just staying active. There's no reason why we shouldn't always be active and doing something so that we can be in the best shape of our lives always, constantly progressing. Like I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life now than I was when I was younger, and I continue and I plan on inspiring to continue to do so. Every year I continue to be better than the year I was before.
Yeah, and really, if it's something that it's difficult for you, I find that when I have those moments where I'm not so inspired, or my body hurts particularly more than usual, and it's really hard for me to move, I have like one routine, and that's my default mode. Like when I feel like I have absolutely no motivation, no willpower, I'll just throw myself on the floor and I do like 3 or 4 exercises.
Nice.
And at least it's something.
It's something.
And that is anything. And once you
Yes.
start, then maybe
it gets easier.
Yeah.
Something is always better than something. Something's always better than nothing. That's
one.
that's what I truly always say, and it is truly it's like a gift. Once you start, it's honestly just momentum.
Yeah.
You just keep on going. There's some days when I don't feel like doing exercises, so what I'll literally do is I'll do like 100 bicycle crunches, or I'll do something like 40 something dips or something of that nature. Or I'll do however many push-ups until failure, but at least I'm doing something that is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So guys, with that, thank you very much. We're now about to do a series of circuit exercise trainings that are pretty much more so catered to Serena because of her injuries. So I asked her pretty much, where does it hurt? That's a Cialis. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I should probably even just be saying that because it's like an ad thing. Anyways, but like, but the point was, I try to kind of get an understanding because she's one of the people who I've spotted in the workouts who I'm like, yo, is everything okay? Do you not just like the exercises? You know what I mean? I was like, yo, what's up? I hate your exercises. They're lame. You know what I mean? So I was like, what's going on? But then she told me, she was like, actually, no, that's not the issue. It's just that yada, 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 yada. And she explained herself. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. Because, I can't necessarily cater all my exercises to everyone. In fact, all these exercises are exercises that I find myself having done in the past and have worked for me. So I thought it was very interesting because I was like, well, can we still do exercises that can also be catered to other people who may have some type of injury or some type of, something or another? And so that's why we ended up, pretty much here today having this conversation and recording this. So now we're going to do these exercises that are a little bit more Serena friendly. So feel free to join us, and that's going to be in the next video. See you soon.